Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an interesting question, an interesting conundrum on the topic of historical recordings. Some of you mentioned this one recently, or one of you did. This is George Szell doing Brahms First and Dvorak Eighth from the Lucerne Festival. These were recorded, in 1969 and 1962. The Brahms is with the Swiss Festival Orchestra, in other words, a pickup ensemble, and the Dvorak is with the Czech Phil. And the sonics in both of these are very good, radio broadcast quality. The Dvorak is particularly good. The performances are. What do we say about this? Here's the thing. One of the person commenting said that, these were like the greatest thing since sliced bread. Someone else said, well, the Dvorak isn't anything as good as his studio recordings, both of them. I've listened to this rather carefully, and I've come to this conclusion. Let me put it to you this way. There are some conductors who were better live than in the studio. Very few who were better in the studio than live, but some who were comfortable in the studio. Szell was one of those conductors about whom you could say very, I think, confidently that there was absolutely no difference between what he did in the studio and what he did live. Very little difference, let's put it that way, because I've heard many live recordings as well. He was incredibly consistent. Music for him, it didn't matter what he was doing, where he was doing it. It was a thing that deserved the ultimate in attention, no matter what happened. I mean, a really good example of that is his Sibelius Second, the Tokyo recording, versus the Concertgebouw studio recording. They're both extraordinary. They're both absolutely superb. You might say that the live one has just that extra edge of intensity, maybe, but the Concertgebouw one has better sound overall. I mean, they're both genius interpretations and realized perfectly in both cases. So, you have a personal choice, obviously. We have a choice. Most people tend to go for live recordings because they think there's something more live about them. More spontaneous, maybe, is the word. I think it depends on the person, depends on the artist, right? Szell was not known for his spontaneity. At his best, his performances sound spontaneous. They have amazing discipline, and they never sound overly constrained. At his worst, they do sound overly constrained. You hear that. But it makes no difference whether he's live or whether he's in the studio. He had a standard, and he never fell below that standard. So what does that have to do with these performances? Well, the Brahms First is a wonderful, exciting performance with a pickup orchestra that I don't think is as fine as his Cleveland Brahms First, because I think he just has the orchestra executing its usual unbelievable, textural clarity and perfect balances and beautiful ensemble values. Here, you have a lot of the same. There isn't any corresponding, I think, live benefit, particularly, but it's a very good Brahms First. Don't get me wrong. And it's nice that Audite was able to get, permission to release these. The Dvorak Eighth is a very interesting case because he recorded it twice in Cleveland, and they're both terrific performances. They really are. I think his second is actually a little bit better than his first. This is with the Czech Philharmonic. And of course, the Czech Philharmonic is the Czech Philharmonic. It's not exactly the same anyway, as his studio recordings. Interestingly, it's rather more relaxed. I mean, he does, for example, the coda to the finale is as exciting as anybody's ever done it. But on the way, he tends to, slow down a little bit to take in the scenery, particularly in the third movement, the waltz, which is in a very measured tempo. I actually think it's a bit too slow, to be honest with you. I think it needs more lilt, a little bit more of that singing quality. And here he's very, very measured and almost to the point of being metronomic, which shows actually that he could be, more constrained live than he was in the studio. It's impossible to generalize when you have somebody who operates at this level of excellence, because he's always going to get what he wants. And he has a very clear idea about what he wants. And that idea doesn't change a lot from one performance to the next. Because remember, we're hearing him at his full maturity. It's not like these recordings are, he's a kid. You know, I mean, this is the 1969 Dvorak Eighth. It's just before he passed away. So he had his conception of the work was fully formed. And the only issue is how well does he realize it? He wasn't like Furtwängler, who had a magnificent conception on occasion, and as often as not couldn't realize it. And so everybody goes around listening for the bits where it comes into focus or he does get it right. Here, you know he's going to get it right. The only question is, what sounds better? Is it righter, perhaps, a little bit, in tiny ways, one to the other? And when I listen to somebody like Szell, who works at this level of these high standards, I kind of question whether it even makes any sense to make the comparisons. Because yes, the scherzo of the Dvorak Eighth is more relaxed, is slower than in his other versions of it. But does it make any difference? I mean, what does that mean? You may like it, you may not like it, but they're all up there. They're all up there at that wonderful level of achievement. So here we have it, this Brahms 1 and Dvorak 8. I don't know if I talked about it before here, actually. Frankly, I may have. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how somebody can be guilty of the crime of amazingly high consistency. And that's what this is. Is there any reason to listen to historical Szell recordings? Well, if it's works that he hadn't recorded before, if it's music he hadn't touched, sure, why not? But if it's something that he did in the studio, probably there's not so much point, because he got what he wanted, and what he wanted was pretty incredible most of the time. So there you have it. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.